The first time the alien spoke to me, it borrowed my mother's voice. It came through a dream so ordinary, I didn't notice the edges melt. A kitchen light. The smell of oranges. The soft buzz of our old fridge. Then the voice said, "Don't turn on the light." I looked up. The bulb above me was full of slow-moving water, like a snow globe tipped on its side. "We arrive when you sleep," it said, and the bulb's filament flickered like a heartbeat. I woke at 3:13 with my own hand over my mouth. I lay there listening to the apartment hum. Pipes a bus sighing outside. I stared at the dark and tried to be sensible. People dream strange things. Stress does that. I work nights at a sleep clinic, so I know what the brain can stitch together. But even as I tried to laugh it off, the word arrive would not let me go. It didn't feel like a hallucination. It felt like a small door opened in a place I did not know I had, at the clinic. We keep the rooms cool and dim, so people fall into REM fast. I sit behind glass and watch slow waves become storms. That week, one of our new patients drifted off and slipped into REM on the early side. The EE traced 3 spikes, even and sharp, like a little crown. He mumbled, "Find the lighthouse beneath the city." His lips barely moved, but the microphone caught every word. I froze. That exact phrase had been in my dream, too, right after the filament blinked out. I shouldn't have, but I pulled his audio and made a copy. I told myself it was professional curiosity. What I felt was more like the first snow when you realize the world is suddenly different. The following night, the voice came back. This time it wore my neighbor's laugh. It spoke calmly, like a friend guiding me across an unfamiliar bridge. "Keep walking," it said, "even when it feels like you are walking in place." I asked what it wanted. I didn't say alien out loud, but the word pulsed behind everything, heavy as a light turned off. "We guide," it answered, like the idea was a hand on my shoulder and a direction in my bones. "We arrive only in dreams. We are safer there. You are too." That morning, the news cycle had a soft, odd story about a global dreamwave. People waking with the same images. Lighthouses in deserts. Trains underwater. A chorus of 3 notes hummed on different continents. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't already been awake at 4 a.m. reading. A thread with shaky phone videos of folks humming the same pattern. Nor from the lab sent me a voice note before her shift. "I had the shore dream," she whispered. "No water. Just sand and a sound like glass singing. Is your thing like that?" I typed and erased 3 answers before sending. I think it's guiding people. Don't tell anyone yet. I used to get sleep paralysis as a teenager. The weight, the helpless panic, the feeling of someone at the door. This was not that. This was close, but not cruel. Like hands on either side of my face, steadying me. And it was not only mine. I began hearing small echoes in ordinary life. A child in the grocery line humming the 3-note pattern. An old man on the bus tracing a spiral on fogged glass. A woman on TV describing a lucid dream where a visitor spoke with her father's voice about maps that weren't maps. The word telepathy came up in forums and then in polite articles no one wanted to write. People used words like astral and subconscious and contact. But what I felt most was simple. Someone trying very hard to be gentle. One night before my shift, I set an intention to have a lucid dream and wrote it on a sticky note. Ask who. Ask why. Ask where. I did the little test they teach. Look at your palms every hour while awake. Count to 6. Ask if you are dreaming. When I finally slipped under, the kitchen came again. But this time, I knew it wasn't the kitchen. The light bulb held its ocean, and I looked up into it and felt everything pull slightly. Tides pulling in a room with no water. "Who are you?" I asked. The answer was soft and simple. "We are current." "You are sea," I said. Why me? The bulb fizzed with a smile. Because you work at night and listen for storms. That was the first time it gave me a clear instruction. Tomorrow, turn left after the bakery, even if you never do. I woke up annoyed, then laughed, because it was exactly the kind of petty test you give someone you like. In the morning, I turned left and walked past the flea market I usually avoid because the music is too loud, and the jeans all smell like old closets. At the second table was a little red shortwave radio with a cracked dial and a sticker of a lighthouse half peeled off. The man behind the table smiled like he knew me. "This one hears what others don't," he said. "I don't buy things on whims." But I left with the radio wrapped in newspaper and the feeling you get after calling someone you have been meaning to call for years. At 11:11 that night, the radio woke itself. It doesn't have a function for that, but the dial light flared and the speaker breathed out 3 clean notes. My skin prickled. I brought it close to my ear. The notes came again, not music, more like pressure converted into sound. And then the kind of silence after storms, charged and waiting. I thought of the patient's 3 spikes. I thought of the voice using people I loved to ride in on a wind I couldn't see. I thought, if this is contact, it's kinder than any UFO story I ever heard as a kid. The next day at the clinic, some man named Yusuf came in with a tired smile and a beat-up leather cap. He was here for a study on fragmented sleep, but he had a ham radio sticker on his bag and a drawing tucked into a book. When he nodded off, his EEG made the little crown, clean and steady. Afterward, when we were signing forms, he asked quietly, "Do you hear them, too?" My face must have showed something because he slid the drawing across. A spiral, not perfect, with small blocks along it like stations. "They tell me to bring certain things," he said. "Copper wire, salt water, mirrors. Don't laugh." I didn't. I reached into my bag and pulled out the red radio. "Mine sings at 11:11, I said. He breathed out in relief, and I felt less alone in my own head by the end of the week. Noor had added herself to our little circle. She had kept her dreams in a notebook that smelled like coffee and hand sanitizer. Her notes were simple: lanterns underwater, maps in breath, numbers in moth wings. We made a tiny, secret group chat and gave it a name that made us smile: Beacon, like we were pretending it was a street club and not a line thrown across sleep. People found us anyway. A student in Manila, a nurse in Lagos, a teacher in the mountains somewhere who could only send audio. Their messages were careful. No one said aliens first. Everyone said dreams. Everyone said guiding. Some said telepathy, but then apologized for it, like it made them sound silly. We shared methods for lucid dreaming, for waking gently, for remembering. We shared the way the 3 notes made our chests settle and our eyes fill. A pattern grew. The voice would ask for small, ordinary acts that felt like turning cogs. Put a mirror in your window. Collect rain. Sit quietly at 3:13 with your hands in salt water. When we followed, we felt the radio wake and the notes hum like breath under our own. We posted pictures that seemed nothing on their own bowls of water, loops of copper. A candle with a wick bent in the same curve, but together they looked like pieces of a simple machine we didn't understand yet. Not a machine for building something outside us. A receiver for the inside. When the unknown number called, I let it go to voicemail. A polite voice asked if I had experienced unusual dreams and if I would like to join a national sleep health initiative. Study unshared imagery. The script was too smooth. I felt watched and at the same time ridiculous for thinking that. The second time they called, the polite voice asked about 3-tone signals and if I had ever felt compelled to collect conductive materials. I said wrong number and hung up. I told Noor and Yusuf, and we agreed not to talk about it on the thread. It made me wonder how many other groups like ours existed, and how many were already. being told a different story about what was happening inside their own heads. My brother came by that night with takeout. And a grin so easy, I almost told him everything. We watched a silly show and talked about our mother's garden, and then the conversation slid, as if a hand had pressed it lightly, to dreams. "Do you ever get that thing where your dream bleeds into the room?" he asked. "Like you wake up and the corner is still doing something?" He rubbed his forearms like he was cold. "I keep seeing moths with tiny numbers on their wings. I feel stupid telling you." I touched his shoulder. "It doesn't sound stupid," I said. I wanted to say aliens, telepathy, arrival, but I didn't. I told him about the radio, and he listened without a joke. That's how I knew this was real, in a way you don't get to choose. A week later, the voice told all three of us to meet where the city used to drain the river, in the old tunnels under the museum. "Find the lighthouse beneath the city," it said, the now familiar phrase that made my scalp tingle. It asked us to bring water with salt in it, a mirror big enough to see our faces together, and the red radio. "Don't be afraid of the dark," it added. And somehow, that was the only part that made my chest hurt. We each told someone we trusted where we would be and when to worry. I wrote a note that said, "If I'm asleep, do not wake me." Then crossed it out because that sounded like a spell I didn't mean to cast. We went after midnight. The air down there was cool and smelled like pennies and rain that forgot where it was going. Our flashlights made the brick walls damp and honest. We found a wide room with a low ceiling and a ring of old stains around a dry basin. We set the mirror on a cracked ledge. We poured the salt water into a bowl. The radio, even off, warmed my hands. Yusuf's breath whistled a little when he was excited, and it whistled now, soft and eager. Noor took my hand, and I was surprised at how much that helped. We stood in the dark and waited. If someone had walked in just then, they would have seen three people being very earnest with what looked like an art project. But inside, everything was leveled. The radio light woke at 3:13 exactly. The three notes rose, simple and perfect. The surface of the salt water shivered like it was standing in a wind. The mirror didn't show us for a second. It showed lights like coins dropped into deep water and falling away. I felt that gentle pressure around my face again, those careful hands from the first night. "You're safe," the voice said without using words. "Stay with us. We arrive only in dreams, but this place is close to sleep." I didn't mean to, but I closed my eyes. I didn't fall asleep in the usual way. I stepped into sleep like a pool I already knew the depth of. The kitchen came and went. The tunnel stayed. The surface of the water bowl widened into an ocean inside my head. The lighthouse was there, but it wasn't a building. It was a column of breath, made of us breathing together. The alien did not look like anything. It was more like the feeling of standing in a doorway and finding your body already knows which way to turn. "We guide because you asked," it said. Long ago, in another language. You asked to be kept from the dark that eats maps. A low hum rose from the brick around us, not sound so much as a promise. The radio clicked. The three notes folded into a slow, patient chord. The air tasted like metal rain. "We can't cross," the voice said, "but you can lean. We need one of you to lean deeper, to hold the door open long enough to teach the others what to build when you wake." My eyes opened on their own. Noor's hand squeezed mine 3 times, steady and scared and ready. Yusuf stared at the bowl like it held an answer he had been waiting to hear since he was a boy with a homemade antenna on a roof. I felt something tug at the back of my head. Not cruel, just insistent, like a tide that knows its time. A drip fell from the ceiling into the bowl and stood up instead of breaking. It lifted thin and trembling like a silver thread, and then it wasn't water at all, but movement held in place. The mirror showed us standing under a white tower that wasn't there in the room. The radio light brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again. Breathing. Above us, the city kept breathing too. Buses and quiet fish in pipes and people turning in their beds. The voice said, almost tender, "Now?" The air shifted, and for a second, I felt my legs forget how to belong to me. I knew, with the kind of knowing that lands all at once, that if I let go, I might not come back in the same way. I might come back with something in my mouth that was not words, but would change everything I said after. Nor whispered, "I can do it," but her voice trembled, and I knew what it costs to be the one who leans. Yusuf shook his head, then nodded, then shook it again, tears flashing in the radio's soft light. The cord rose. The bowl's surface quivered like a held breath. Somewhere behind us, faint as a moth's wing, a footstep moved. We turned, but there was nothing in the tunnel except the dark, waiting. Then a child's voice drifted from behind the mirror that faced us, soft and familiar, saying, "Don't turn on the light." The radio clicked once, like a question. My hand tightened around Noor's. The silver thread bent toward me, between one breath and the next. It felt like someone reached from inside the dream and took my wrist. The touch was cool and not a touch. It was like dipping my wrist into a stream that was inside a glass, the way water presses without fingers. My breath went short, then evened, like it had found a rhythm older than mine. The silver thread tilted toward me, and the bowl of salt water rippled, not outward but inward, small waves folding into the center. I didn't feel pulled as much as aligned, like when you turn a key and feel the teeth fit. The child's voice behind the mirror said, "Don't turn on the light," and yet everything brightened without light. A kind of gentle clarity that carried the taste of metal and rain. Noor was still holding my hand. I could tell without looking because of the 3 squeezes, because her palm went warm when she was scared. Yusuf shifted his weight, and the brick under us hummed. I didn't move. The thread touched my skin where the pulse runs close. For a heartbeat, I was both standing in a drainage tunnel and standing in my mother's kitchen at 3 a.m., watching the bulb fill with water. The hum became breath. The 3 notes unbraided into many, like a cord being undone into strands. Not words, not images, pressure. Meaning as shape. The first thing it showed me was a map that wasn't a map. Lines like the ones on EEG paper, but bigger and softer, drifting across a dark that felt kind instead of empty. Where the lines met, there were small flares like tiny lighthouses. It said, again without voice, "We are current. You are sea. We arrive in dreams because that is where you have room to hold us." The phrase should have made me laugh. It did not. It made me want to cry in a way I knew I would not understand until later. Then something in the tunnel moved. It wasn't a loud thing. A dry pebble finding a new home. A shift in air. The thread flickered, not as if it were scared, but as if offering me the choice it had always been offering. I thought of how often I had wanted someone to decide for me. The radio clicked. The mirror held that other view coins of light falling through deep water, and also a faint reflection of us now, ghosted over it. I felt the request again. Lean, hold the door. Let us teach you how to build a place to meet when you wake. My body did a small, stubborn human thing. It checked the space behind us, even in a dream, even in a room where dreaming had been invited on purpose. I turned my head. The dark was honest. My heart kicked. The gentle hands around my face steadied, like someone reminding me how to stand on a boat. "You choose," it said, as if I hadn't heard that all my life. In other words, I didn't choose. Not yet. I think the 3 of us chose together by not moving. The thread thinned, stretched, then laid itself back down into the bowl like it had never lifted. The radio light dimmed to a soft ember. The mirror remembered us fully. My knees trembled the way they do when a train stops and you didn't. Realize your legs were doing the balancing for you. None of us spoke first. The air did, with its damp pennies and quiet. Nor let out a breath so slow, it sounded like a hymn. Yusuf wiped his eyes with his sleeve and pretended it was just the dust. We waited because it felt like there should be words for that kind of almost. And then the child's voice, not from the mirror this time, but from somewhere inside my own chest, said, "Good." It didn't feel like approval. It felt like the page of a book turning. We didn't stay much longer. We couldn't have explained what had happened if someone had asked. And yet it sat in us like a definite thing, like a letter you haven't read yet, but can feel its weight in your hand. We packed the mirror in a blanket. We put the bowl in a bag that would still smell like the river in a week. We walked up into the city with the radio tucked under my arm, its dial warm against my ribs. On the street, the world kept doing what it does. A bus exhaled. A couple laughed too loud to cover an argument. A woman in a yellow coat stood at a corner, humming the three notes like she'd always known them. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message preview said, "We can help you manage unusual dream phenomena." I put the phone in my back pocket and did not answer. At home, I set the radio on the table like a sleeping infant. I rinsed the bowl, and then, without meaning to, I put a little salt back in and filled it again. I left the mirror leaned against the wall. The apartment felt both crowded and empty, the way a place does after visitors leave. I lay on the couch and in the moment before sleep. The voice that hummed that wears familiar speech like clothing said, "You asked. Long ago." And a picture rose that I hadn't called for. Me as a kid sitting on a stair with a flashlight under a blanket, making a cave where the light could be kind. My mother in the doorway sang through a smile, "Don't turn on the light. You'll wake your brother." And me turning it off anyway because shared darkness felt safer than being the only bright thing. I woke with the small, good ache of a new bruise of knowing. The radio stayed quiet through the morning. In the afternoon, I met my brother for coffee, because normal is good medicine when the world tilts. He looked tired in a way that made me want to tell him the whole truth and then wrap it in jokes to keep it from touching him too hard. "I dreamed about the moths again," he said. "They landed on my hands. The numbers moved if I tried to read them." He sipped and looked at me like I was an answer he hoped existed. "I half think you'll tell me aliens now, and I'll feel foolish, but also relieved." "Call them what you want," I said. "It's contact, but it's sideways. Telepathy, but only in dreams. Like help that comes in the one room where all the windows are covered and you can finally hear your own feet on the floor." I didn't tell him about the tunnel. Not then. I told him I was working late, that we had a study coming up, which was also true. At the clinic, the week turned into a long hallway of nights. The new phrase in the news was shared dreams, said with careful mouths. In our lab meetings, the director passed around a memo from a group called the National Sleep Health Initiative. It had a seal at the top and asked for voluntary participation in a survey about dream content. The words three-tone signal were in it, not bolded, but still loud. We kept it in the minutes like that would make it harmless. After the meeting, Noor poked my shoulder with a memo and whispered, "You see how they already know what to ask?" "They're not wrong to ask," I said. "I just don't like that they knew to ask." Noor smiled without humor. "My aunt says when rain finally falls after a long drought, everyone looks like a prophet." We kept learning in small ways. The crown spikes on the EEG showed up at 3:13 for 3 patients in one night. One muttered under the museum like he was reading the bottom of a glass. Another traced a spiral on the bedsheet with her finger and hummed the notes with her mouth closed, teeth resting on the hum. We started keeping a quiet list of times and patterns, not for the official records, but for us. We called it the Beacon Log and tucked it under the plant by the window like kids. Beacon, the group chat, grew without us trying. People found it the way water finds seams. A woman from a coastal town sent a voice note where you could hear gulls and her shy voice saying, "I dream of a door that only opens when I forget I'm trying to open it." A teen who worked at an electronics stall wrote, "If I wrap copper wire around a mirror and breathe on it until it fogs, the notes come softer and then a new tone slides under them like a low road." A man who had once believed he was being haunted now said he felt guided and hated and loved how much that difference changed his day. We shared, and we were careful, and even with careful, the unknown number found two of us. One disappeared from the chat after agreeing to come in for an interview. Maybe she just got busy. Maybe she didn't want to tell strangers about the most delicate thing in her life. Maybe in the quiet hours, I thought about the phrase, "We guide because you asked." What language had I used to ask? It couldn't have been words. Maybe it was all the times I had pressed my ear to the darkness and hoped it had a shape. Maybe it was the first night I slept in the clinic alone while training. The whole building breathing, the blips and beeps like small creatures calling across a pond. And I had said into the empty room, "Is anyone else awake?" I had laughed out loud at myself. The next morning, an EEG printout had slipped under a door as if someone had pushed it with their foot. It had 3 neat spikes. I asked my mother on the phone if I had talked in my sleep when I was little. She paused the way people pause when they are making a decision to tell you something. "You used to hum," she said. "A few notes, always the same. Your grandfather said it was a prayer he knew from long ago. I never could remember it when I woke up." She laughed softly. No worry in it. You were my good sleeper. We tried another place. Not a tunnel this time. The roof of Yusuf's building, flat and tarred, and painted with half-faded hopscotch squares left by kids in summers past. We made a circle with copper wire and set the mirror in the middle. We didn't bring the bowl because something in us thought this should be air, not water. The night was light with the city below. Planes drew careful lines far above us. Someone in the building across had a TV turned up too loud. It kept us ordinary at 11:11. The radio clicked. The notes came softer in the open air. The wind played them like a reed, bending the edges into a different key. The feeling arrived that careful hands, the pressure that is meaning and not force. It asked us to exhale on the mirror together. So we did. 3 breaths, then 3 more. The mirror clouded and the cloud held, which is not how steam behaves. "This is the room," the voice said. "This is what you build. A place where our side and yours can lean against each other without breaking. You said one of us would lean deeper, nor said out loud, brave and plain. Why one? Because of how your tides work, it said. Because 3 can hold one when the pull is strongest. Because you understand teaching as 1 letter at a time." "Do we choose?" Yusuf asked. "Or do you?" He kept his eyes on the mirror the way you keep your eyes on the horizon when you're trying not to be sick. "You choose," it said. "We do not enter. We shape currents. You sail." We didn't decide. The air cooled. A neighbor's door slammed. Somewhere below us, someone laughed. The mirror let go of our breath and went back to being glass. I watched Yusuf's face and saw there the pure relief and fear that comes when you realize no one is going to rescue you from your own choices. The next morning, a white envelope sat on my doormat with my name written in neat, patient letters. Inside was a brochure for the National Sleep Health Initiative and a small mirror sticker with a note for your device. The word device made my throat go tight. I checked the hall. No one. The sticker caught the morning light and made a tiny rainbow. On the wall that moved as if it were looking for a place to settle, I sent a picture to Beacon. Half replied with a quick slide of emojis that meant both be careful and I see you. One person wrote, "That sticker changes the tone when I put it near the radio." It adds a high, almost out-of-range sound, like a thread you can only see out of the corner of your eye. Noor wrote, "We need to test if the sticker is a microphone." Yusuf wrote, "Or a mirror." All day the unknown number called. I let it. At the clinic, a new patient wore a hoodie with a UFO on it, the cartoon kind, and made nervous jokes about abduction. He fell asleep and did not joke at all in REM. He cried quietly, like rain and leaves, and said in a voice not quite his, "We don't cross. We don't cross." When he woke, he looked at the ceiling like maybe he would find an answer there. I wanted to put a hand on his shoulder and say, "You're not wrong to be scared." I wanted to say, "It's not like the stories we were raised on." I set a hand on the blanket instead. Sometimes the smallest true thing is all that can be held. That night, I tried a micronap. I set the radio by my head and lay on the couch with the stickered mirror on my chest. I told myself I would stay just on the edge, the way you keep a teacup pressed to your lip without sipping. The notes were a gentle current running under the floorboards. The hands came steady, familiar now. The child's voice whispered, "Don't turn on the light," and I understood then that it meant don't startle. Don't flood the room. Let your eyes adjust. The map that tisn't rose again. More flares this time. More little lighthouses all over, growing brighter when I paid attention to them. Some dimmed, like a breath held too long. Some flared and then pulsed in a rhythm that matched the crown spikes on EEG paper. The current that feeling of them said, "We cannot hold you if you jump. Let us match. Let us learn your edges." Then it showed me a house with a straight little path and a childish, careful garden. I knew it was Nur's before I saw the little ceramic frog she keeps by the basil, the one she's had since she was a kid. "We learn with what you love," it said. "We know what is yours by the way your breath changes when you look." My phone buzzed on the table. The unknown number again? The buzz tugged me back. I sat up too fast, the way you do when you fall in a dream and catch yourself on the last stair. The mirror on my chest flashed my own face, pale and serious and older than I feel. And for a blink, the white tower stood behind me where my bookcase should be. Not a building, not even an image. An idea so clear it made my scalp prickle. Then nothing. Just my ceiling and the old crack I keep meaning to get fixed. The message waiting said, "We know you are experiencing shared imagery, including a tower, a mirror, and a tone. We can help you organize this into actionable research." It was signed with a name that sounded like it belonged to a person and not a program. One typed and erased and typed again. I wrote, "Who are you?" I did not send it. I met Noor the next day on a bench near the river. We watched the water pretend to go one way and then another, depending on what the wind wanted. She brought the salt bowl empty. And we both set our phones face down like talismans. "I keep thinking about the phrase we asked," she said. "I don't remember ever asking." Then I think, maybe it's not about remembering. Maybe sometimes you ask just by being ready. I keep thinking about how they won't cross. It doesn't feel like a rule they made. It feels like the way your hand can't go through glass, no matter how much the person on the other side wants to hold it. She nodded. It also feels like there are people who want to turn on every light and see if the glass melts. We sat there a long time, letting the traffic make conversation we didn't need to have. On the opposite bank, a kid launched a paper boat and ran along the shore to keep up with it, arms out, whole body in the trying. Something in me hurt in a clean, hopeful way. When I got home, the radio was already on. I hadn't turned it on. The light on the dial was steady. The 3 notes came slow, like a patient heartbeat. Then a new sound slid under them, higher, almost out of reach, like a smile with no mouth. The mirror sticker on the edge of the radio glowed faintly. Probably a trick of the light, probably not. The current arrived with the careful hands and said, "Now we begin." It did not feel like a promise. It felt like the first step onto a bridge I could not see the end of. We tested little things. We put the mirror near the radio and then far. We braided copper into loose ropes and into tight coils and noticed the way tight felt like a clenched jaw. Loose felt like a river finding a wider bed. We put a bowl of salt water on the floor and then on the table, and it stayed calmer on the floor. We learned that our bodies are part of the circuit and that sometimes what we ate made the tone sit different in our chests. Noor said, "We have to keep it human. If we try to build a machine out of this, we'll forget we are the bridge." One night on the roof, the child's voice came through the radio as if speaking from the bottom of a glass. "There is a lighthouse beneath the city," it said again. "And then, there is also a lantern on the hill. You need both. 2 rooms." Yusuf asked. "2 sides," it said. "Water and air. Salt and wind. Don't force the tide. It will turn you." "We still haven't chosen who leans," I said quietly. "We keep standing on the edge and hoping someone else will be the brave one." "We don't need brave," Noor said. "We need steady." My brother knocked on my door the next morning with a face that had not slept well. He stood in my kitchen and turned the red radio over in his hands like a new book. "I think I get it," he said, soft. "It's not aliens like movies. It's more like a current. Like a voice you already have, but never listen to without other noises. They guide because you asked." That's what they told me. It should have made me happy. It did, and it didn't. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a coil of copper wire and a small mirror in a plastic frame. I made a little setup. "Do you want to see? I think the moths want me to line the numbers up with the coil. It's silly." "It isn't silly," I said. "It's also not a solo sport. We do this with other people." He nodded, but his eyes were already that kind of far you get when a song you love starts in your head. At 11:11, the radio clicked. The dampener on the table stayed still. The sticker didn't glow. The notes came anyway. Simple. The high tone brushed the room like the wing of a thought. My phone buzzed with beacon chatter. Anyone else feel the shift? It's like the map lights are moving. I see more flares. I see dimming on the coast. Someone wrote, "The museum tunnel is blocked." There's fresh paint on the doors. I went to the museum at lunch. The lower level was closed for maintenance. A new sign stood where there had been none, with a polite list of non-permitted items: liquids, mirrors, radios. It read like a poem in a language that knows only no. I stood there with my hands in my pockets and felt a pressure on my wrist where the water thread had touched. The air tasted like new drywall. A security guard watched me without moving his head. That night, Beacon organized something that wasn't a ritual and felt like one. In cities and small towns, and in one boat anchored near a coast. People set mirrors on floors and breathed with them at 3:13. No one posted pictures. We sent only descriptions after. A woman in Lagos said the notes lifted like a kite and then stayed. A student in Manila said a new tone came in, lower than the others, like a road under the road. A teacher in the mountains said the stars looked wrong in a way that made his heart happy. We were building the room. We did not know what would enter. The unknown number kept up a steady tap on the window of my life. We're hosting a listening session. We can share safety practices. We can provide EEG equipment. We can help you measure. The last one tugged at me. Measuring is my language. You can't just be a person who feels and hope the world takes that as proof. I wrote back, "Can you keep our names off any list?" They wrote, "We can try." Around dawn, I woke to a text from my brother. "Don't worry. I get it now." He had attached a photo of his porch table with a bowl of salt water, a coil of copper, and a small mirror with fingerprints on the glass. A moth sat on the edge of the bowl. The numbers on its wing were blurry. The caption said, I think I can help. Don't turn on the light. I called him. No answer. I tried not to picture him doing this alone. I put my shoes on without thinking. The radio on my table woke, and the 3 notes came quick, urgent. Then came a voice, not mine and not the careful hands. It was my brother's. He spoke into my room as if he was calling from the bottom of a well. "I'm okay," he said. I leaned a little. "There's a door. It's not where we thought. It's not under the city. It's static." The high tone stretched and thinned. The mirror on the wall brightened even though no light touched it. The child's voice came through with a softness that always undid me. "Don't turn on the light," it said. And this time I heard another layer. Not yet. The knock came again. 3 taps. 313. Not from the hall. From somewhere deeper in the building, down near the laundry where the old pipes hum. The radio breathed. The 3 notes stacked into a chord I had never heard before, new and inevitable. Noor's name lit up my phone. Yusuf's name right after. We had to choose. We had to go, and we had to decide who would lean when we got there. And we had to do it without turning on every light someone was offering us. I stood in my doorway and listened. The building breathed like a sleeping animal, full of pipes and quiet fish and people turning in their beds. The knock came again, steady. The current pressed gentle hands on either side of my face. Now it said, and I didn't know if it meant go or wait. The mirror caught the room behind me, and for a blink I saw the white tower where my bookcase should be. The idea of it so clear my scalp prickled. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from the unknown number. "We can meet you downstairs. We can keep you safe." I texted back without thinking. "If you come, no bright lights, no tones, no gear." Then I left the door and headed for the stairs with the radio under my arm. The coil of copper in my pocket, the mirror wrapped in a towel. The building at 313 felt like a big animal breathing. Pipes hummed. The hallway nightlight made a soft oval on the carpet, the opposite of turning on the light. The kind of glow that lets your eyes adjust. Noor met me on the landing as if the building had slid her toward me. Yusuf came up from below with a toolbox that clinked like it was full of seashells. We didn't need words. We went down together. The laundry room door stuck the way it always does in the damp. Inside, the smell of soap, wet metal, and something like pennies. A floor drain in the center like a little version of the city's. A circle with lines that made a neat star. 2 sides, Noor said. Soft. Water and air. We need the lantern on the hill at the same time. "I can go up," she added before I could answer, a hand already on the rail that leads to the roof. "You two do water. I'll be air. Beacon can echo on the roofs around us." I nodded. We didn't argue because the decision had been made somewhere quieter days ago when we kept saying we hadn't chosen. Yusuf handed me the copper. He wrapped a second coil and put it in Noor's bag. She squeezed both of our hands like she was reminding us we were human. Then she went up. Her steps faded into the building's breath. Dr. Lin and Oren were already in the hall. As if they had obeyed the rules of a house they'd just entered. No cases, no rolling carts. No headlamps. Dr. Lin held the envelope with the dampener between 2 fingers like a peace offering. "We'll stay by the door," they said. No lights, no tones. "We just want to make sure no one falls." "Stay," I said, and I meant it in the way you say it to someone you trust, just enough to let them be near a thing you love. Oren took off their shoes and stood on the cement in socks. A small thing. It settled something in me. We set the mirror on the floor, taped at the edges like our quiet rules said. We poured salt into the bowl and filled it from the hose that feeds the washers. The radio sat on top of a dryer, its dial a small moon. The sticker was wrapped in foil. A little hat that made me want to laugh if I hadn't been breathing like I was carrying something fragile. 2 rooms, Yusuf murmured. He set the coil around the drain and another around the bowl. Not tight, loose enough to feel like a river. He looked at me. You sure? No, I said. But I'm steady enough. I placed my hand on the mirror. It was cool and honest. The shortwave radio hummed the 3 notes, soft as breath under a door. The high tone hovered, out of reach. The building's motion sensor clicked, ready to flood the room if anyone moved wrong. Oren stepped in front of it and quietly held a jacket over it with both hands. Arms up in an awkward, kind pose that would ache if this took long. Don't turn on the light. I checked my phone. Beacon threaded with quiet messages. Ready in 10 on the hill. Ready now in the valley. Our power flickers, but we're here. My aunt says to keep our feet warm. The nurse in Lagos sent 3 blue dots, and then, breathing with you. The student in Manila wrote, low tone present. The teacher in the mountains, stars are too close in a good way. My brother hadn't read my last message. I tried calling and stopped myself after 1 ring. The careful hands had taught me. Enough to know the difference between calling and grabbing. The radio's notes matched. Something in the building's ribcage. The floor under us made a slow, patient sound, like a ship that trusted its own weight. I felt the careful hands around my face, even while awake. Don't flood, the child's voice said inside, and I knew it wasn't a warning against one person. It was against an idea. Don't flood the room with everything you are afraid of losing. We never opened the museum tunnel. The sign stayed. It became part of the city, the way old scars become part of a hand you love. We didn't need it. We found our own drains and our own hills. We learned that copper wire wants to be loose. We learned that salt water sings if you ask kindly. We learned the mirror is a tool and also a teacher. If you breathe on glass and your breath stays, you have made a room that will remember you, on a night that felt like a continuation of all the nights that had shaped us. The global dreamwave found a rhythm. At 11:11. In cities and small towns, and in a fishing boat, and in an apartment above a bakery, and in a house with a careful, childish garden and a ceramic frog. People leaned the smallest amount, steady and not brave. We hummed the 3 notes. The high tone slid in from the lantern side and from the lighthouse side. They braided, politely. The current met us in dreams and near dreams. We matched. We did not turn on any bright light. We saw more because of that. When it was done, the world was, against all odds, the same and not the same. The buses still exhaled. People still turned in their beds. The news added a word remission when they talked about panic and nightmares. The word aliens did not leave, but it softened. Telepathy stopped being a punchline. Sleep clinics talk consent with your own dreaming. National groups learned to wait. The 3-tone signal became a story you could hum to your child when thunderstorms rolled in. The kind of sound that says the house is not the whole world and you're safe in both. I stood in my kitchen a week later at 3 a.m. The way this began, light bulb above me, full of quiet water. The old fridge making that breathy sound it always makes. The shortwave radio sat on the table, its dial dark, its sticker asleep in foil. The mirror leaned against the wall, catching a slice of me and a slice of the room. The bowl on the floor held a little moon. My mother's words came from memory and from the careful hands that have never left. Don't turn on the light. I didn't. I let my eyes adjust in my pocket. My phone buzzed once. Beacon sent a small message. Teach 3 people. Rest. We had made that our rule after. Everything no one carries more than 3. The rest will carry the rest. I wrote back, yes. The map that tisn't rose in me without effort. More flares, tiny lighthouses, a scatter of lanterns. The space between numbers on moth wings, opening and closing like gills. Like windows, like doors that remember the gentle instead of the flood. I thought of how we had asked long ago without knowing it, and how patiently the answer had traveled to reach us in dreams. Before sleep caught me, I sent one message to my brother, humming tomorrow. He responded with a recording of the 3 notes, sung through his teeth so soft the sound was more breath than tone. Then he wrote, always. I laid down. The careful hand steadied my face. The current welcomed me like a familiar hallway. The door we had built together waited. I leaned, not far, just enough to greet what arrived. And the dark did what it does when you don't make it prove itself. It held.